Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Ford and I'm a customer engineer at Google on the Apogee Edge team. In this video, I'm going to show you how to transform a response payload from JSON to XML. We're also going to learn how to make that conditional based on the accept header from the original request. There are a couple of prereqs, so if you need to, pause the video and go check out these links. In order to make this transformation happen, several steps need to occur. Fortunately, this is simple to do in Apogee Edge, and it's extremely useful when you have different clients that want to consume different formats. So let's see what this looks like. I'm in the overview page for a proxy I've already created that is basically a pass-through proxy that goes to a backend that only returns JSON and doesn't like any clients requesting anything but JSON. So I'm going to do a couple invocations so we can look at how it behaves. You can use any client you like as long as it supports sending headers. So when I send no accept header, I get JSON back. If I try to request XML, the server throws an error. So let's see how we can fix that. I've pre-created the policies that we'll need to make this happen, and I'll show you each one in detail. None of them are attached to the API proxy at this point, and before we do that, I want to highlight a really important document called Understanding Flows. It's out on our document site, and I'll include a link to it in the references at the end of the video. But it shows you a nice graphic that lets you figure out exactly what attachment point you'd want to use for given policies. So the very first thing we want to do is extract the header that the client passes in and store it in a variable. So we're going to use the extract variables policy. And it's relatively simple. I can take a variable from a header, from a query parameter, path parameter, the payload of the request, anything. And you can see exactly how it works. The accept header, I'm going to apply the value of the accept header to this pattern and store the result inside original accept header. Next, I need to replace the accept header because the client passed in application XML. And we've already seen that if we pass that to the back end, it's not happy. So now I'm going to use an assign message policy to force the accept header to be application/JSON. And of course, just like the extract policy, we could set headers, query parameters, we can set payload attributes, anything we like. So now if I were to run it, we'll see that no matter what I pass in, I'll always get back JSON. I pass it XML, I get JSON. I pass it JSON, I get JSON. We're getting there. We've gotten rid of the error, but we're still not doing any transformation. So now, in the response preflow, I'm going to do my JSON to XML conversion. There are a lot of options for this policy, but I'm keeping it simple for the purpose of this video. And I'm also going to set the content type header on the response so the client knows what he's getting. And that looks very similar to one you've seen previously. Set headers, the name of content type, to the static value application XML. So now, what happens when I send it with the application JSON? I'm getting back XML. The transformation's happening, but it's always happening, which is not what we want. We want the transformation to be sensitive to the accept header that's passed in. So let's make that happen. We do that with conditional statements. So in our preflow, we have an extract and a replace. I want to make this policy, the replace accept header, as well as the two policies that deal with the response. I want those only to be triggered if the client sent in application XML as the accept header. So I write something like this. Make a little more room. We're also going to apply that to both of these steps. Let's save our proxy. And I'm going to turn on the trace tool. I need to let that finish deploying. I'm going to turn on the trace tool so we can see what's happening as we make these calls. And at this point, we should have fixed all of the cases we were interested in. So when we send JSON as the accept header, now we get back JSON. When we send XML, we get back XML. And you'll notice the content type header has been set appropriately as well. And if I send an invalid one, that will get passed through to the back end, which is what we want, because that should throw an error. And it did. Now let's look at our trace tool and see exactly what happened. So the very first one, we sent an accept header of application JSON. Because of that, this policy was skipped. This is the assign message policy to replace the header, as well as both of the transformation policies were skipped. When we passed in application XML, all of our policies were invoked. And this last time, when we sent an invalid accept header, it was the same pattern as the previous application JSON. This was skipped, which caused that invalid header to be sent to the back end, which responded with an error. So let's recap what we've learned. We started with an API that only returned JSON data. We learned how to extract and store variables in the request and use them to implement conditional statements for other policies. We learned how to set the accept header to satisfy our backend. And finally, we saw how easy it is to transform the payload using the JSON to XML policy. I hope you enjoyed the video and are confident that you can implement transformations in your API proxies.